Welcome to On the Tigers News. I'm Alexis Richer. Thanks for being with us today for the news we've been following for you. Congressional leaders are vowing to vigorously probe allegations that Russia interfered in the elections to benefit President-elect Donald Trump, but they are already arguing over who should do so and how any examination should be conducted. Senior Republicans want to channel any investigation through the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, over which they have greater control. But some Democrats, fearing that the result of such an investigation would never be released to the public, are pushing the formation of an independent body of outsiders modeled on the September 11th Commission. Still, other Republicans would like to see a bipartisan investigation in Congress, or better yet, form entirely new congressional committees and subcommittees to dig into the matter. Ohio Governor John Kasich used his line-item veto authority on Tuesday to strike down the so-called heartbeat bill legislation that would have created the most restrictive abortion law in the nation. At the same time, Kasich signed into law a separate piece of legislation, SB 127, that forbids abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy, a move that certainly will prompt court challenges. The heartbeat bill would have banned abortions once a heartbeat is detected. A ceasefire deal between rebels and the Syrian government in the city of Aleppo effectively collapsed on Wednesday, with fighter jets resuming deadly air raids over the opposition's densely crowded enclave in the east of the city. The attacks threatened to scuttle plans to evacuate rebels and tens of thousands of civilians out of harm's way, in what would seal the opposition's surrender of the city. The evacuation was supposed to begin at dawn, but shelling resumed in the morning hours, and buses meant to be used in the pullout of rebels and civilians returned to their depots. Activists and fighters trapped in the opposition's last sliver of territory in Aleppo said pro-government forces had struck their district with dozens of rockets since mid-morning. The Federal Reserve is expected to raise its key interest rate for the first time in a year when its policy meeting ends Wednesday. The move would lift the rate by a quarter point to a range between 0.5% and 0.75%, likely nudging up the cost of some consumer and business loans. Student loans could also be affected. The Fed last increased rates in December a year ago when it hiked its benchmark rate from a record low set at the depths of the 2008 financial crisis. Brutally cold air and heavy lake effect snow is a story in weather. Here's Mr. Charbonneau with the forecast.
The coldest air of the season is ready to pound this area beginning later this afternoon, and with it, heavy organized bands of snow that have the potential of dropping nearly 2 feet of snow when it's all over Thursday night. Now, this Arctic cold mass will be amplified by very, very strong winds that will plunge our temperatures and our wind chills near 25 degrees below zero Thursday morning. The wind will also make for some blizzard-like conditions during the overnight and more so during the day Thursday. Expect the bands of snow to begin further north near Watertown this afternoon, dropping heavy lake effect snow this evening around sunset. During the overnight, that band of snow is expected to dive southward toward the Tug Hill and south into our area. We could expect anywhere between 8 and even 10 inches of snow during the overnight. Now, during the day tomorrow, it's quite possible to see snowfall rates at 3 inches an hour as the Lake Ontario bands connect with the upper Great Lakes and cross the full fetch of Lake Ontario. But again, the wind is the key factor with this event. Gusts up to 40 miles per hour are expected to blow and drift snow that could create whiteout conditions. High temps tomorrow only in the single digits, much colder wind chills. The lake effect snows dissipate Thursday night into Friday morning, but we remain cold with highs Friday only in the low 20s before some warmer air comes in for Saturday. A very wintry forecast. Be careful out there. I'm Michael.
Boys basketball bounced back in a big way last night. Here's Josh Yearden with sports.
Off to a great start, the Mexico boys hoop team held on for a 64-61 win in Cortland last night. The Tigers went off for 12 three-pointers in the game. Dylan DeLong led the way with 20 points, followed by Zach Lawler and Jay Seisman, who had 16 and 14 points respectively. It was the first league win for Mexico, which moved its record to 2-1 for the season. They're back in action next Tuesday at Jordan Elbridge. The girls' hoop team is at APW tonight, looking for its first win of the season. Boys swimming is at Oswego today, and the wrestling team hosts CBA and JD beginning at 6:30 tonight. Looks like spying isn't restricted to Russia and presidential elections. Wake Forest has fired a former assistant coach turned broadcaster who the school says attempted to leak football game plans to opponents for 3 years. The school on Tuesday night announced the findings of a nearly month-long internal investigation that started after documents related to the team's game plan for the Louisville game were discovered at the Cardinal Stadium. In a statement, the school placed the entirety of the blame on Tani Elrod, a former Wake Forest player and assistant under Wake's former coach. Speaking of Louisville, Lamar Jackson returns as the Associated Press College Football Player of the Year, the latest addition to the Sophomores' Hall of Postseason Awards. The youngest Heisman Trophy winner received 42 of 61 first-place votes from AP's Journal of Media voters. Jackson received 153 points overall, followed by Clemson's quarterback Deshaun Watson and Alabama defensive lineman Jonathan Allen. Watson received 10 first-place votes and Allen 3. And finally, there was a time in the old Big East days that the days leading up to the Georgetown game was known as Hate Week. While the rivalry has diminished since Syracuse left for the ACC, any game with Hoyas is a big game. The two long-time rivals are back this Saturday in the Carrier Dome with a noon tip time. Syracuse comes in at 6-3, while Georgetown has been inconsistent early on. It comes in at 6-4. The game is on ESPN at noon. That's it for sports. I'm Josh.
The mid-marking period ends on Friday, with teachers submitting 15-week grades next Tuesday. Weather permitting, the newest members of Mexico's National Honor Society are set for inductions tomorrow evening at 5:45. And seniors are reminded to order cap and gown sets. And if anyone is interested, the snow day calculator says we're at 99% chance likely to have a snow day Thursday. Jamie's inside out, pencils in the freezer. Thanks for joining us. Look for us next week. I'm Alexis. Have a great rest of your week.